This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, emerging markets were mostly flat today as we see trading thin out ahead of the Christmas holidays. But of course, emerging market stocks are on course for their best month since January. They are boosted by easing recession fears and an interim trade truce between the United States and China. Pretty quiet day across Africa's key markets. In Nigeria, we saw FMCGs taking a big hit today. PZ Cussons, Cadbury, Guinness and Dangote Sugar falling 10% on the day. Now, also coming up on the show, a Nigerian startup secures $20 million for renewable energy projects. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani holds talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And we get a taste of Cape Town's first township roadside pizza cafe. Well, let's start off today's show in Nigeria, where off-grid solar firm Rensource has secured $20 million in a Series A equity round. Now, this represents the largest ever funding for a Nigerian renewable energy startup. The goal is to address West Africa's power crisis, starting, of course, with Nigeria, by delivering renewable-based decentralized energy with a primary focus on SMEs. Well, let's examine how this project will impact Nigeria's power sector. We're joined by Deji Badmus in Lagos. Deji, always good to have you on the show. Now, a lack of reliable power has, of course, plagued Nigeria for decades now. This year alone, the IMF says it's cost the country about $29 billion in economic losses. So, Deji, give us a sense of how much of an impact a project like this will have on Nigeria's power sector.
Well, maybe not enormous, but it definitely would have some impact. Of course, not enormous, but no doubt significant, because at the moment, Rensource, for instance, is operating around 7 clusters in 6 states of the country. Now, the plan is to push that number up with this funding that has actually come in. They say they are looking at around 100 market clusters, so that will be significant. Because in the case of Rensource now, it's pivoting away from a household. It's no longer showing interest in supplying solar power to household. It's targeting a cluster of markets now. And, for most of these markets you have around Nigeria, most of them are powered by individual generators. The level of pollution in this market the market's now very, very high. And when you consider the number of people around one cluster, using power at the same time, then it gives you a sense of how significant this is. So this is actually significant. It's good because the national grid does not really target this market clusters now. So, and that's where Rensource is coming. And it's not the first time it's doing it. It started it, and I think it's actually seen a profitable pathway now in this, and that's why it's going big on this, and that's why it's investing so much. So $20 million will definitely, it's something very huge and would make some difference. Maybe not as huge, to make a significant difference now in Nigeria's power situation. And let me just quickly say this, Uche. We also know that apart from Rensource, you have some other renewable power companies now, private firms now, that are also doing the same thing. And when you add all of their efforts together, then that's when you'd begin to see some kind of significant results.
Right. Well, Deji, given the size of the funding they were able to get, does this signal that the shift towards cleaner sources of energy and certainly renewables is gaining momentum in Nigeria?
As a matter of fact, I would say that shift has happened. It's the momentum that we're beginning to see, no doubt. Fact is that you come to Nigeria now, you look around the country, especially in places like Lagos, Abuja, and some other commercial cities in the country. You see solar panels popping up on rooftops and all of that. So people are really, really gravitating towards solar. The only challenge, the challenge is the initial capital outlay. It's really not easy. I mean, if you're deploying solar system, for instance, it's quite expensive. And the good thing is that companies like RentSource, for instance, have come up with easier ways to make it easy now for people to actually switch over to solar. It's easier to deploy. In the case of RentSource, for instance, targeting markets, these market women or traders now are actually allowed to make a weekly payments, quarterly payments, monthly payments. So it makes it easier for them. And in the case of household, we've seen some other solar power companies now that are offering people some kind of discounts and allowing people to pay in installments. So that shift has actually happened. What has not happened, and that is happening now, is the momentum we're seeing. And if we continue to have initiatives like this, where different solar power companies now are coming up with different systems now to make it easier for people to make that switch over, then I think that in the next 4 or 5 years, the number will grow up. For instance, RentSource says it is targeting 1 million users in 5 years. It's not impossible for that to happen if they continue to come up with creative initiatives like this and make it easier for people to acquire these systems. I think it's going to happen, and especially when we can't see any positive pathway now to Nigeria's power crisis, so to speak.
Well, on that note, on Nigeria's power crisis, we know that the country did privatize most of its power sector back in 2013. It did retain control of its transmission infrastructure. But 7 years since that privatization, what has been the impact on the sector?
I would say what most people would tell you here is that they haven't seen any significant difference at all. Things have not really improved. A lot of people thought when the private sector came into the power sector that things were actually going to improve, but we haven't seen that. The bottom line is that the infrastructure is still it's in decay, and we've not seen the kind of massive investments we thought the private sector guys were going to come in with. And of course, part of the reasons some of them would tell you is the fact that, for instance, you talk about tariff. They are not allowed, for instance, to charge, cost-reflective tariff. Now we're beginning to see some of them come up with some kind of model, they call it willing buyer, willing seller model, where they go to some estates and some communities, discuss with them. If those communities are willing to pay what they call cost-reflective tariff, then they get like close to 24-hour power supply. But, that, of course, targets wealthy communities, if you like, wealthy estates and all of that. So it's still not the solution. We hope that there'll be more investment in the power sector. And we also hope that as some of these distribution companies, of course, and the generation companies have been saying, these are the private sector guys now, they've been saying, look, the multi-year tariff needs to be reviewed. There's a need for them to be given the opportunity or chance now to begin to charge cost-reflective tariff. That if you do not have that in place, it's difficult to see how Nigerians can enjoy a better power supply than they are getting at the moment. But no doubt at all, the infrastructure we have is bad. We need to make massive investments, not just in transmission, both in generation and distribution as well. So if those things do not happen, Uche, it is difficult to see how Nigeria's power situation would get better.
Well, the AFDB did just approve a $210 million loan, which is going to go towards helping Nigeria upgrade its transmission and distribution network. So how will that help solve the problem? And of course, how is this government approaching the problems in this sector?
Well, first off, that loan is very, very significant. It's very important. It will make a whole world of difference. The country's distribution network it's really bad. We're talking about at the moment. What we are told is that Nigeria's transmission capacity is just around 7,000 megawatts. At the moment, we're generating, say, around 5,000. So if the country was to generate, say, even 7,000 megawatts, the fact is that it would not be able to distribute that power. That's how bad the situation is. And that is why you need massive investment. And that is why this loan now coming from the Africa Development Bank would make a significant difference. We're still waiting to see. The government has actually not come out openly to say, to actually begin work now. We do not know if the government has actually gotten the cash now, so to speak, and where it hopes to deploy. Of course, it says transmission and distribution. These are very key areas. These are key areas that need investment. Now, this $210 million is not as if will turn the situation 360 degrees, but it definitely will make some huge difference if Nigeria is able to invest that money in transmission and distribution. Then we would begin to see some kind of difference now in terms of the amount of hours that people get public power supply for. Other than that, fact is that it's difficult to see how anything can improve. And the truth is that if you do not have this loan, for instance, coming from the Africa Development Bank, and probably you have private sector investment, I do not see how the government can raise money now to be able to address some of these problems. But fact is, these private sector guys need to up their investment in the power sector. If they do not do that, Uche, honestly, I think we'll just be going around in circles and discussing Nigeria's perennial power crisis that never ends.
Of course, there are a number of issues in the sector that we could discuss all day, Deji. But many thanks for your insights there. Deji Badmus joining us there in Lagos. Well, let's head to Egypt now. The country has embarked on a plan to upgrade its rundown railway system. This includes buying new locomotives and introducing new IT systems for ticketing as well as operating trains. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with more.
A set of new train locomotives arrived from General Electric to Alexandria Seaport. They're a batch from over 110 carriages meant to develop the railway system. They cost $600 million.
We are delivering 110 locomotives today. There is also a 15-year maintenance and spare parts delivery contract for 181 carriages, in addition to upgrading 81 other train carriages and developing them.
Egypt's railway has been neglected for decades. The result is a recurrence of tragic accidents that have killed scores of passengers. An upgrade of the railway system has become a main target for Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's second term in office.
There are several other deals for new locomotives similar to this one with other American companies. We also signed a contract and the carriages are being produced now with Transnational, a Russian-Hungarian company, to deliver 1,300 first, second and third class coaches. They are all high-end coaches with latest technology and comfort facilities for passengers. The cost is $1,160 million.
The overhaul will be done over several stages.
The short-term plan ends in June 2020 when we complete the upgrade of existing locomotives, upgrade our maintenance centers and computerize the ticketing. On the medium term, we will add more coaches, carriages and new railway lines to reach 2 million passengers a day in 2022 from the 800,000 now. The total amount we are spending to completely overhaul the railway and underground metro system, including the stations, ticketing, railway lines, we are talking about spending $100 billion by the year 2024.
It's not just about providing better services, but expanding the railway system as well. This is a very ambitious project by the government. The railway currently serves less than 1 million passengers a day. By 2024, it will be serving over 4 million passengers per day. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's head to Ethiopia now. It is celebrating a milestone after it launched its first satellite into space. The satellite was developed by the China Academy of Space Technology in collaboration with 21 Ethiopian scientists. Now, China also injected about $6 million out of the total $7 million for development of the project. While CGTN's Gerum Chala reports from Taiwan in China, where the satellite was launched.
Simply a once-in-a-lifetime historic moment for Ethiopians. The first ETRSS-1 remote sensing satellite is now in orbit. It is from here, China's Taiwan Satellite Launching Center, that Ethiopia has managed to send one of its own to orbit. The Ethiopian delegation has witnessed the overwhelming moment.
I don't know if there is enough words to express my feeling. The only thing I can say is that when I saw our satellite going up, I was in tears.
Back home, millions have watched the launching on TV, and at the Addis Ababa Entoto Observatory Center, many have gathered for a special celebration. This has given hope for rapid growth in space science in Ethiopia.
The most important thing is that this is the first chapter in the space science technology for Ethiopia. I think it also symbolizes the significant partnership Ethiopia enjoys with China.
Right after the launch, Ethiopia's Space Science Institute said ETRSS-1 has already started delivering footages and data as intended.
The control station of Entoto is shown the first image, and starting from now, then we'll proceed to use the application for the end users of the satellite.
ETRSS-1, the most important and first Ethiopian satellite, has been launched through the collaborative work of Chinese and Ethiopian engineers. China has also allowed its most famous launching center to complete this job. Group Jala CGTN, Taiwan Satellite Launching Center, China.
Well, back home in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, a ceremony to watch the launch was led by the Deputy Prime Minister, Demeke Mekonnen. Here's CGTN's Coletta Wanjoy with that.
History in the making for Ethiopia as it goes into space. The satellite launched in China cost over $7 million, with $6 million provided by China.
China's economy has developed at a nearly double-digit growth, and there are many lessons learned. And an important one, is to capitalize on new technologies, to ride the tide of modern technologies, like space technology, digital economy.
Ethiopia says the 70-kilogram satellite is primarily for monitoring the environment and studying weather patterns. It is designed to help improve agricultural planning, provide early warnings for droughts, and assist in mining activities and forestry management.
The satellite will be monitored from Ethiopia, and the control center has been set up here in Addis Ababa at the Ethiopia Satellite Observatory.
Dinaol Zelalem is one of at least 10 satellite control engineers who will be monitoring it 24 hours a day.
The satellite can take the photo of Ethiopian land, and then that photo is stored on the server. Then the expert on the ground can add a value on the photo or the data. Then it interpret, analyze, and then add a value. Then finally give to the end user, like agricultural sector, like water sector, like the forestry.
This is the third East African satellite. Kenya's was launched in 2018 and Rwanda's in September this year. In May, Ethiopia signed an agreement with China to build another one for communication and broadcast. It has also reached a deal with French space company Ariane Group to start the construction of satellite manufacturing, assembly, integration and testing facilities. From now on, the government says space is the limit. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And now look at our corporate headlines today. South Africa's National Treasury says it is working to restructure ailing power utility Eskom. This comes after ratings agency Fitch warned that failure to form a credible plan to stabilize South Africa's debt could prompt a downgrade. In the meantime, despite a constrained and vulnerable system, Eskom says it expects no load shedding on Friday as the holiday period brought a drop in demand. And elsewhere, Goldman Sachs is close to reaching a settlement of $2 billion with U.S. regulators over its role in the Malaysian 1MDB corruption scandal. Now, the Wall Street Bank is said to be formulating a deal under which its Asian subsidiary, rather than the parent company, will pay the fine and admit guilt. That's for having allegedly turned a blind eye while roughly $4.5 billion was looted from Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund, 1MDB. And France's leading phone and internet provider, Orange, has been found guilty of moral harassment that resulted in a string of employee suicides during the late 2000s. The company was fined about $120,000 on Friday in a landmark Paris court ruling. Former Orange CEO Didier Lombard was also convicted to 4 months in prison and ordered to pay roughly $16,000 in fines. And finally, an Australian federal court has ordered Volkswagen to pay a record $86 million fine for misleading car buyers about emissions. The German auto giant is accused of fitting cars with software designed to cheat emissions tests. Now, the company has paid tens of billions of dollars in fines around the world since the scandal broke in 2015. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's head into a quick break now. Still to come. African entrepreneurs collaborate with Chinese firms at a forum in Cote d'Ivoire. And Samsung invests in South Africa's higher education.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay, we'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Uche.
Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, the Sino-Ivorian Investment and Public-Private Partnership Forum has been underway in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. The event is focused on setting up a legal framework that seeks to initiate collaboration between local entrepreneurs and Chinese companies.
What's important for us young Ivorians is to educate our entrepreneurs through the development model of China. For us, the Chinese model can help us develop. But for that, it is necessary to know how to forge partnerships.
China-Africa cooperation serves as an example for Côte d'Ivoire, but the government must create a framework that will allow Ivorian small and medium enterprises to work in partnership with the Chinese private sector.
Well, in Nigeria, getting blood to a patient in need is a race against time. However, LifeBank, a medical logistics startup, is now revolutionizing the way that blood is transported. CGTN's Digi Badmus caught up with the company's CEO to explore how it's speeding up blood deliveries and also mobilizing blood donations and saving lives.
How do you operate? I mean, getting, for instance, blood donors to give blood without collecting money?
So we're not a blood bank, so we don't collect blood. What we do is link people to blood banks. So first link donors to blood banks, then link blood banks to hospitals. So in terms of getting donors to commit to give blood, I think for the most part, people are willing, right? Nigerians are pretty giving, generally. And what was missing was people to make it easy and fun. And that's what we've been able to do. We've been able to gamify it, make people really excited about what we're building. And that's been really, really great. We don't pay our donors. Our donors have to be voluntary, 100% voluntary. We do give small rewards like, something, free co-working space, free manicure, that sort of thing. But there's very small non-monetary rewards. Of course, there are other people who do sell their blood. About 60% of all the blood in Nigeria is from paid donors. But we don't do that. We rely completely on voluntary blood donors.
Was it really easy for you convincing investors now to invest in your idea and also convincing hospitals to sign up to LifeBank?
So connecting to investors was pretty easy. If you've built something of value that is already financially valuable, investors will invest. That's just the nature of investment. So that was pretty easy, for the most part. I think one of the things I did earlier on was focus on Nigerian investors instead of, say, foreign investors. And I think the reason why I chose Nigerian investors is because this is a problem they could understand. A lot of people outside Nigeria can't understand, or outside developing countries, can't understand how a system like this could be needed, yeah? But every Nigerian knows of a story of somebody looking for blood, somebody dying because of blood not being available. So I really focus on that. For me, I think that to convince hospitals was actually also pretty easy, mainly because they knew the problem already existed. They're the ones who get to write death certificates for these women. They know the cost of not having this system. So it was really easy to convince them.
So in all of this, how do you make money?
So we are a distribution company. Yeah, we're a logistics company. So we make money by doing logistics and distribution. And blood is not sold. Nobody sells blood. Not blood banks. Nobody sells blood. What is sold is the services to make blood safe.
I want you to walk me through the processes now someone in need of blood can make use of LifeBank now to get their supplies.
Okay, so someone needs blood, first, before she needs blood or he needs blood, we already have inventory information from blood banks. So every day blood banks tell us the stock they have, So this blood bank says I have 10 bags of O negative, and this one says I have 2 bags of AB positive. So we have all the information, the data.
Now, Samsung, one of the world's leading electronics producers, is doubling its investment in tertiary education in South Africa. The tech giant is funding a second year of university for a group of students. This, of course, will bring its total investment over 2 years to almost $1 million. Here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola with more.
Tech giant Samsung kicked off its bursary program in 2019. It's been extended for another year, much to the relief of beneficiaries. Poor South Africans get the first year of university free, but the rest have to fork out hefty tuition fees and other costs.
I come from a middle-class family, so every day my parents would have to make ends meet to ensure that my fees are paid. But even that was a struggle because I didn't have stable financial assistance and I never knew when or how my fees were going to get paid, and it was really a struggle.
It has helped me a lot because I've always wanted to pursue my career and go to university, and they have given me that opportunity because I wouldn't have found it anywhere else, and they're making it easier for me to attend class because I never go to class hungry.
Highly skilled professionals are in demand as the world gravitates towards a more tech-enabled future, but they're in short supply in South Africa. Bursaries have to be awarded across several disciplines to help bridge the skills gap.
The fourth industrial revolution is coming. It's inevitable, but that does not mean those fourth industrial revolution will be being led by electronic or technology. Those who have a very smart thinking, right, more of a business mind or literal mind. So that's why we didn't limit for this bursary program for the major.
Unemployment is close to 30% in the country, and a qualification does not guarantee a job. The company is trying to address this by placing outstanding students in its leadership program.
We have the challenge of graduates finishing their studies and having nowhere to go in terms of employment opportunities. So as we grow as a company, we always there's a constant need for us to refresh our employee base. I can guarantee you, not less than 50% of them will be in our network, whether at Samsung itself or through our partner network.
Samsung is one of many corporates funding higher education in South Africa to prepare those young people for the future workplace. But low economic growth still hampers job creation and absorption of those young graduates into the market. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, in Tunisia, the volume of private agricultural investment, which is reported, has edged up about 72% per year, and that's since the entry into force of the new investment law in April 2017. Now, authorities assert that the agricultural sector is now booming with new investments, but farmers and unions complain about the lack of resources and the declining performance. CGTN's Adnan Shaushi with more.
According to official data, the annual average of reported investments reached $550 million after the promulgation of the new investment law, compared to an annual average of $300 million during the period 2014-2016.
The private agricultural investment has recorded a clear recovery in the volume of approved investments, despite some difficulties encountered at the beginning. The ministry and the state have provided the necessary tools to encourage and accompany investment in the agricultural sector.
The minister added that investments in agricultural mechanization have increased significantly after the doubling of the bonus granted at the time of acquisition.
Indeed, the number of tractors has increased from 1,500 before the promulgation of the law to 2,500 tractors per year worth $50 million. Farmers have an easy access to modern equipment to boost production.
However, unionists have raised the alarm, saying that the agriculture sector has declined in several sectors in recent years after the state abandoned its role as protector of farmers.
The loss of more than 30% of agricultural products and the lack of financing by banks in the agricultural sector shows this decline. The minister says that private investments are up. It's true, but ordinary farmers do not feel any positive impact. Only giant agricultural companies are winning while we are losing money.
The head of the National Union of Agriculture and Fisheries considers that the state remains under the control of financial lobbies that hinder the achievement of Tunisia's food sovereignty by controlling the price as well as the import and export flow of agricultural produce.
Authorities assert that the situation of farmers has improved, while union leaders maintain that an unprecedented crisis has hit the sector, which is a pillar of the national economy. As a result, thousands of young people are living in inner regions and migrating to cities in search of jobs. Adan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break. Still coming up. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani holds talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And these YouTubers will make you rethink your daily job.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Years of conflict and an Ebola outbreak left Africa's oldest independent republic devastated. Liberia is now trying to rebuild amid numerous challenges. From industry, health, and even culture. It's a story of resilience and hope. Join me, Susan Wongeli, as we take a look at how Liberians are charting a new path. Only on CGTN.
Let's now recap today's top headlines. Ethiopia is celebrating a milestone after it launched its first satellite into space. Now, the satellite was developed by the China Academy of Space Technology in collaboration with 21 Ethiopian scientists. China also injected $6 million out of the total $7 million for development of the project. And South Sudan is recalling its ambassadors to the U.S. This comes after the U.S. Treasury placed 2 senior government officials under sanctions, while President Salva Kiir's advisor called these sanctions unconstructive to the peace process. And French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived in the capital of Côte d'Ivoire, Abidjan. This is his first stop of his visit to several West African nations. He is set to meet French soldiers in Côte d'Ivoire and later hold talks with local leaders. Rising insecurity in the Sahel is the main reason behind Macron's visit. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. Now, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is in Japan for a 2-day visit. That's amid increasing tensions between Tehran and Washington. Rouhani is the first Iranian leader to visit the East Asian nation in nearly 20 years. He met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo. During the meeting, Abe welcomed the visit, pointing out the start of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Now, Iranian officials have expressed hope that Japan will resume buying Iranian crude oil by defying or bypassing the U.S.-imposed sanctions, which of course have led to severe inflation that continues to damage the livelihoods of Iranians.
I strongly hope that Iran will fully implement nuclear agreement and play a constructive role in promoting peace and stability in the Middle East region.
The nuclear agreement is significant for Iran, so I strongly condemn the unilateral and unreasonable withdrawal by the United States. I hope Japan and other countries will make an effort to support this agreement.
And in Australia, 2 firefighters are dead and several injured after their truck crashed on the way to battle a fire. The Prime Minister has apologized for going on holiday in Hawaii as one of the nation's worst bushfire disasters escalates. CGTN's Greg Navarro reports.
Authorities are investigating the cause of a crash that killed 2 volunteer firefighters in New South Wales and injured 3 more after their vehicle rolled while on the way to battling a fire.
I've also had reports of a crew that was overrun by fire near the Bargo area. with a number of crew members suffering serious burn injuries.
On Thursday, a state of emergency was declared for all of New South Wales due to extreme fire conditions fueled by heavy winds and an ongoing drought. At least 100 fires are burning across the state. About half remain uncontained. This one was seen jumping a railway line as it raced across the countryside. At least 20 more homes have been destroyed.
There's everything from people's homes, people's businesses, there's poultry farming operations, there's all manner of enterprise that is productive through southwestern Sydney, and there are lots of buildings, including people's homes and livelihoods, that are being impacted by this fire this afternoon.
The smoke from some of those fires once again covering the city of Sydney in a thick smoke haze.
This is definitely as bad as I've ever seen it in Sydney. So yes, it was fairly shocking, especially considering how sustained it was over a period of days. When air pollution exposure is short, it's easy to tell people, gives people advice about how to avoid it, stay indoors, don't, avoid physical activity. But when it's sustained over a number of days or weeks, then the messaging becomes more complicated.
People in many parts of the country tried to stay cool as they endured some of the hottest temperatures on record, some places hitting 47 degrees Celsius.
Schools are being shut down.
Protesters gathered outside Prime Minister Scott Morrison's residence in Sydney to draw attention to what they say is the result of a climate emergency, and demanding that Morrison return from an overseas holiday.
And it is time for our Prime Minister to get out of the pockets of the coal and gas lobby groups and to start thinking about the future of Australians.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison responded by releasing an unusual statement apologising for any offence caused by taking a family holiday at an undisclosed location while communities in the country deal with bushfires and heat, and vowed to return to Sydney immediately. Firefighters in New South Wales are focused on containing fires and on what the weekend may bring when conditions are expected to worsen. Ragnar Barham, CGTN, Sydney.
Now, couriers are usually amongst the most sought-after services before festivals, and even more so during the Christmas season. While the holiday traditionally is by far the busiest time of the year for couriers and delivery firms around the world. Take a look.
Up to 400,000 packages a day will make their way through this parcel centre this Christmas season. That's twice the volume it handles at other times of the year. And Deutsche Post DHL, the world's largest courier, is well prepared across Germany.
Wir wissen ganz genau, an welchen Stellschrauben wir drehen müssen.
We knew exactly what to do. For instance, we hired more than 10,000 temporary staff who can help our core workers at this busy time. We have about 12,000 additional vehicles on duty to deliver parcels from A to B quickly and safely.
Online shopping is driving business, Mr. Hess explains. The company expects to handle record numbers of parcels this month across its 36 sorting centres in Germany. It's forecasting a 10% increase on last year. Other major couriers, including UPS and Hermes, are also enjoying a spike in demand. That's despite the fact that the German economy only narrowly avoided slipping into a recession in the last quarter.
At peak times this Christmas season, it's estimated that delivery firms in Germany will carry some 19 million parcels a day. That's according to industry group Bundesverband Paket und Expresslogistik.
Buoyed by strong demand, DHL in November launched a mega parcel centre in Bochum, West Germany, which can handle 50,000 parcels an hour. Rival Hermes this year opened 3 new distribution centres in Leipzig, Hamburg and Greven. And all major couriers take on more workers now to cope with the rush.
Like every year, we're happy about this Christmas season. We have steady growth, this year of about 8%. This means about 355 million parcels in total, which is 25 million more than last year. E-commerce is booming.
And despite the surge in deliveries, couriers are geared up to make sure they deliver this Christmas. Rebecca Bunden, CGTN, Rodgau in Germany.
Now, an 8-year-old boy who reviews toys has been named the highest earning YouTuber for the second year in a row. According to Forbes' annual top 10 rankings, Ryan of Ryan's World earned around $26 million this year. That's $4 million more than what he raked in for 2018. Here are some of the other top earners on the list this year.
He made a whopping $26 million last year. That's up from $22 million the year before. He's the prince of the unboxing genre, where he opens presents and reviews them from his family home in Texas. His videos rack up millions, sometimes even billions of views.
This? That's so cool. He goes back up.
Third on the list of top earners is Anastasia Radzinskaya, who made $18 million. Born in South Russia with cerebral palsy, her parents began sharing videos to show the progress of her treatment. Now it's typical kid stuff like playing on the beach with dad. Brands such as Danone and Legoland are thought to have offered her 6-figure sponsorship deals. And a little down this list at number 7, PewDiePie, the 30-year-old Swedish star, found fame by reviewing video games. Although he says he's feeling very tired and is taking a break from YouTube, he's recently been involved in controversies around accusations of racism and anti-Semitism, which he denies.
Well, on that note, let's take a look at how commodities performed today. Oil prices holding steady. They were hovering near 3-month highs. This, of course, will now be a third consecutive week of a rise in oil prices. Of course, easing Sino-US trade tensions, which are the world's 2 biggest oil consumers, have boosted expectations for higher energy demand next year. Meanwhile, gold prices inching lower today on increased risk appetite, as of course traders wait for an interim Sino-US deal to be signed soon. Well, let's take a short break now. Still to come. We get a taste of Cape Town's first township roadside pizza cafe. And Tunisia bans the use of plastic bags.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Let's head to South Africa now, where a company called Sweet and Lovely is now the first roadside pizza parlor to open in Cape Town's largest informal township. Now, the team there is using its skills in classical pizza making to shape the way residents view street food. With more on this, here's CGTN's Travis Andrews.
Khayelitsha may be one of Cape Town's most marginalized townships, but this is a community that knows taste. Taste for the finest pizza in town. And they don't have to go far to get it, because Sweet and Lovely is their local go-to pizza spot, who've become known for dishing out some of the finest pizzas outside of established restaurants in the city. It's not uncommon to see people queuing for their orders. The business was started by 2 former pizza shop workers who wanted to branch out on their own.
Before, it was difficult to get the people because the people didn't know it's a real pizza, this one. Because we started like, I don't know what can I explain to you. Yeah, but it was difficult, but now it's better because I was selling maybe 5 pizzas per day, but now it's better. I'm selling a lot of pizzas because people, they know it's nice pizzas.
3 branches later, each selling over 300 pizzas, business is booming. But success hasn't stopped work on perfecting the best pizza that can appeal to the residents' tastes. This roadside pizza stall even does home deliveries, and the food arrives not only piping hot, but sweet and tasty.
It's so nice because it's cooked and some spices are there, and then I like it.
Yeah, the pizza is so nice. Everything is there. So meaty, whatever is there. So that's why I like it. Very, very, very popular, and it's so affordable anyway.
More than 8 people are employed at this pizza stall, and the prices are affordable as well, with the most expensive protein-laden pizza only costing $8. This is a community of meat lovers, so there's certainly one pizza that always seems to be popular on their list.
The Cape Town pizza is got a lot of meat, got a beef, mushroom, green pepper, chicken. The people, they like it because it's too much meat, yeah. And then you get to just buy two slices, you get it full. That one is right for 8 people, for family otherwise.
There are plans to increase these roadside pizza stalls beyond just the Western Cape, but Khayelitsha remains their main market, where loyal customers are all but happy to queue for the opportunity to tuck into their delicious, locally made pizza. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Now, South Africa's D&H Recycling and Waste Management converts plastic into fuel, making plastic bricks and plastic roof tiles, as well as plastic street poles and garden furniture using, of course, plastic. Now, the company is one of many in South Africa that have heeded government's call to assist in their war on waste. Here's CGTN's Yolisan Jamela with more.
South Africa's government has recently admitted that this country needs a comprehensive plan to tackle the plastic waste problem countrywide and to reach the ideal of a plastic waste-free South Africa by 2030. Waste plastic is a material that, if treated without the required care and management, can cause much damage to the environment. Companies like D&H Recycling and Waste Management are putting forward solutions. The company approaches recycling from the perspective of separation at source. It's also designed to ensure protection of the environment against the negative impacts of waste.
We place our people there at site to separate at source, because that's what South Africa is today. They want the companies to know and follow their waste, where it's coming from and where it's going to.
D&H is the Hencho's pride and joy. Started with the love of the environment.
We start with almost nothing. I was pushing trolley on the road. Like these young people you see on the road, they push trolley, and I start pushing trolley. And today we have something like 15 trucks, and with no help from the bank, from nobody. Plastic for me is like a resource. That's exactly what is happening. That's what I'm very, very attracted with plastic.
That waste that the people are seeing as waste is gold to us. From plastic, we can build roof tiles, we can build pavers, we can build bricks, interlocking bricks. We can do a lot with plastic, and we do plastic to fuel as well.
The company also produces building bricks that can withstand extreme heat. A tool that could come in quite handy in South Africa with constant shack fires.
The very important thing is we take some material we use every day, and we see the fire resistance of that material. And this is where the idea comes. So if we do this and do that, he will go to this. Our bricks, you can go to 1,000 degrees.
While plastic has many valuable uses, humanity has become addicted to single-use or disposable plastic with severe environmental consequences.
According to the United Nations, around the world, people buy about 1 million bottles a minute, and half of those end up in landfills or the ocean.
The Henchos believe that recycling is the answer to the war on waste. Yolisan Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, much like South Africa, Tunisia is also continuing its fight against climate change with a total ban on single-use plastics, which is set to take effect next year. Back in 2017, Tunisia passed a law banning all non-biodegradable bags across its supermarkets. And fast forward to 2019, that ban seems to have worked. Here's CGTN's Adnan Eshaushi with more.
Experts at the General Directorate of the Environment and the Quality of Life assert that single-use plastic bags are the main source of pollution in the Mediterranean basin.
The use of single-use plastic bags has witnessed a dizzying increase in recent years. It's a result of new modes of consumption in Tunisia and elsewhere.
According to the Ministry of Environment, over 4.2 billion single-use plastic bags are distributed in the local market each year. Therefore, plastic pollution is a direct threat to biodiversity and food security.
Vous allez me dire quel inconvénient à ces sacs-là. There are two major effects. These bags do not degrade naturally. They need up to 400 years to degrade a unique plastic bag. In fact, non-destroyed and recycled plastic waste accumulates and dissipates in the environment, especially in marine environment. Small plastic bags are ingested by marine animals and we find them in our food.
A recent World Wildlife Fund WWF report entitled Stop the Plastic Torrent revealed that the Tunisian economy is losing about $20 million a year due to plastic pollution.
Tunisians have always used eco-friendly bags made with natural materials, but the invasion of plastic bags has wreaked havoc and caused damage to the environment and the economy. Banning single-use plastic bags is underway, and it's encouraged by the state.
Although its plastic products industry is small compared to other Mediterranean countries, Tunisia is the fourth largest consumer of plastic products per capita in the region. The North African country delivers about 80,000 tons of plastic waste to nature, representing nearly 15% of all plastic waste thrown into the environment in the Mediterranean, estimated at 600,000 tons per year. In 2018, the Tunisian Minister of Environment announced that there will be no production, selling, distribution or import of plastic bags from 2020. Authorities have taken into account the needs of manufacturers and distributors who have been given enough time to convert production and to produce biodegradable bags. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, before we go, let's check in on Africa's currencies today. South Africa's rand holding steady against the dollar in thin trading today. Of course, Fitch affirmed South Africa's sovereign rating earlier this week, and that helped lift the rand to a 4.5-month high against a backdrop of mildly positive global sentiment. Meanwhile, Kenya's shilling firming up against the dollar, helped by remittances and offshore investors buying treasury bills and bonds. That's amid subdued dollar demand from importers. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.